Hello and welcome to the How to Carnivore podcast. I'm your host, Simon Lewis, and you're tuning into the Plant-Free MD series with Dr. Anthony Chaffee. Dr. Chaffee is a surgeon, nutritional researcher, and former pro rugby player. He's been strict carnivore for 3 years and an on and off carnivore for more than 20. Dr. Chaffee looks and feels like a real-life superhero. If losing fat, building muscle, finding focus, and getting the most out of life is important to you, you're going to love the Plant-Free MD series.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the How to Carnivore podcast. In keeping with the Plant-Free MD series, here we have Dr. Anthony Chaffee, all kitted up in his scrubs, again for another episode. So this is episode 7, and today we're going to be talking about training. And this is a topic Dr. Chaffee is very well versed in, as he's a former professional rugby player. So Dr. Chaffee, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's good to see you. How are your holidays?
Yeah, they were very good, mate. It's nice to have a couple of weeks off. How are yours?
Good. I'm mostly working, but did get a few days off here and there, so it was nice. And not as busy too, so that was good.
Yeah, that's good. No emergencies?
It was only emergencies. We didn't have our elective list, so we just dealt with the emergencies, which is always fine. And otherwise, we didn't have all the normal daily grind, which is also fine.
Yeah, that would be a bit of a relief in a way, a bit of a break. So, Dr. Chaffee, the topic today is training, and it's something that you and I have kind of talked about back and forth. And when I first met you, I had some questions for you around that because obviously you've got your history as a rugby player. One of the sort of first anecdotes that I want to kick off with is that you, unlike nearly everyone else I've spoken to, discovered that carbohydrates before match day were not beneficial for you, and we kind of chatted about that. And I know you used to play fasted, which from my experience playing sport was pretty rare. I can't think of many other people who do that. So can you tell us about how that worked for you and how you discovered it?
I don't know exactly how it started, but I definitely did notice that I would feel better when I didn't eat. So I would certainly wait several hours, if I was training or something like that. I would never eat within 2 hours of that. But then I even noticed that if I ate within 2 hours, it would, or 3 hours or something like that, I would still feel like, there's still food being digested and it didn't feel comfortable. And so I would just sort of go back less and less and less, and then, ended up sort of wouldn't eat like an afternoon or evening meal before I would go to training. And then I was, training from 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. and I just wasn't going to eat anyway. So I'd eat something early in the morning and then I'd eat something late at night. But for the games, because of that, I didn't want to eat too close to the meal. And, being, a young person that just, never liked mornings, I would wake up absolutely as late as possible before I absolutely just had to get up and get ready and go to my training and, or to my game, sorry. And so, I wouldn't have time to eat. And so I just got used to just never eating before the games. And then I started even noticing that if I would eat later at night, I would actually not even feel as good as if I ate earlier in the night and so forth. And I would never eat before the game. And mostly it started out being with just that timing of like, just felt like there was something that I was still digesting. I didn't like that. And then I just noticed it like with playing sevens, you have like a whole tournament. I would feel great throughout the whole day. And if, halfway through or something like that, I would like eat something, it would just shut me down and I would never feel as good after that. And so I never ate until all the games were done. I've known a couple people like that. There was a guy, Philemoni, who I played with, who's actually played sevens on the Fijian national team before he moved up to Seattle. And I played sevens with him there with Old Puget Sound Beach. And he would do the same thing. So he just refused to eat the entire day for tournaments and things like that. I think we were probably the only two on the team that did that. And then, so, even if I had like a game late at night, say like, evening game, like a 7 p.m. game or something like that, I would think like, well, maybe I should eat something earlier. And every time I did, I felt worse. I didn't perform as well. I didn't feel as well. And so I just had the blanket hard rule, like I will not eat on the day of the game. And I just, I felt much, much better because of that. the intermittent fasting people will tell you the same thing. They feel best on their full fast days where they just haven't eaten anything in 24 hours. That's when they run their marathons. That's when they do their big endurance, endurance meets or whatever. And if you think about it biochemically, it makes sense because, we eat carbohydrates and that jacks your insulin up. Insulin forces energy into cells. It doesn't allow it to come out of cells. And so now you've locked down all your fat stores, which is your gas tank. And so you can only run on the glucose that you've taken in. And so your blood sugar, once that goes down, you have a limited amount of glycogen in your muscles and your liver, and your people say carbo load and so forth. But it's still a finite resource because you can't actually replenish that glycogen. Whereas if you are in a fasted state, whereas I think of it as our primary metabolic state, it's an unlimited supply because you continually replenish your glycogen in your muscles and in your liver. There's studies going back to 1981 with wolves looking at this. They don't carbo load before they chase caribou for 10 hours, so how do they do it? And people ask, there's like, well, don't you need carbs to burn carbs? Do they have carbs? Like, yes, they do. It's just like us. They have blood sugar, liver glycogen, muscle glycogen, but it stays rock solid. It doesn't change. No matter what they're doing, it's basically here. I'm sure there's little fluctuations, but it's essentially the same. And so that's the thing. Whereas when you carbo load, you have that's a finite resource because you cannot replenish this because insulin stays up for roughly 24 hours. In biochemistry textbook, it's 24 hours.
The way that I'm kind of understanding it, Dr. Chaffee, is it's like if you haven't carbo loaded and you haven't jammed the glycogen into your cells, which means it's almost like an open door. So you can burn the fat, am I right in saying you burn the fat that you've consumed initially, and then you can just kind of open the door and start tapping into the fat storage in your body?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So if your insulin is too high, it shuts that down. So insulin blocks proteolysis, it blocks lipolysis. So you can't break down protein or fat to make glucose, right? So for gluconeogenesis, right? So because high blood sugar is toxic to the body, this is what kills diabetics, right? It's prolonged exposure to high blood sugar. Your body reacts in a defensive mechanism by increasing your insulin, and that just to get this stuff out of your blood system.
Yep.
And so that can be put into your cells in the form of glycogen, that can be put into your liver in the same manner, and it gets thrown into your adipose tissue as well, your fat tissue. That's not actually a good thing. I mean, it's a good thing in the sense that it's getting rid of this toxic element in your bloodstream, but that's not actually what we want to do. That's not a physiological benefit to us to do that, because it's, while you're getting more glycogen, you're shutting down a lot of biochemical systems and processes that you really need. A much better energy store is your fat. So people say, well, we need to eat a whole bunch of carbs so you store up a bunch of glycogen. Well, you're gonna be storing a bunch of fat as well. So it's not just glycogen. So that's not of benefit if you're trying to reduce your body fat. But it's also not a benefit because you're shoving all this energy into your fat cells that now you can't access. You can only access the glycogen. And so you have to wait for that insulin to come down naturally. And that can take around 24 hours. And so you have the intermittent fasting people that only eat sort of once a day, and they just wait out that clock on the insulin. They work out basically right before they're going to eat again, and they feel great. And there's no wonder they feel great, because they can tap into their fat stores and get an unlimited amount of energy, because you're really not going to run out of your fat stores unless you're extremely emaciated and literally starving to death. People still survive days or weeks in that state. So, people with normal body habitus and fat content, even if they're very lean, they're going to be able to run a marathon or an ultra marathon without running out of their fat stores. That's not going to be an issue. You don't need to eat carbs. And so I just fell upon that naturally. Other people have done this purposefully through intermittent fasting, but for me, I just noticed how my body was working, and I just sort of played with it until I got the results that I wanted.
Yeah, right. I mean, I've sort of been playing around with it as well, and now I'll eat dinner the night before, and then ideally I'll train at like 12:30 or 1 p.m. and then I'll have my first meal after that, and I feel so much better. Like, endurance is better. I feel more explosive as well. Just train for longer and enjoy it more. The idea of going back is just not something that I want to do.
Yeah. No, I just feel so much better as well. And, now that I'm conscious about it and I understand and I'm thinking about it in a biochemical sort of way and, what is actually happening, obviously I'm not going to mess with that. I also feel better just when I'm eating carnivore, still eating, working out on an empty stomach. I still feel better doing that. Well, mostly. Usually if I eat until I'm full, until I'm satiated. And when I do, I get quite sleepy and happy and contented and lethargic. You're going in from your fight or flight to rest and digest. And so you're giving your body a signal. It's like, I've gotten all this energy. I don't need any more. Like, take it easy. Don't expend more energy. We're just going to take it easy now. We're going to repair everything. And so that's why I eat late at night. You only need to worry about timing of your meals. If you're eating carbohydrates, if you eat carbohydrates later at night, you're going to raise your insulin. Insulin opposes growth hormone. Your peak growth hormone production happens 2 hours after you go to sleep at night. And so you're really going to screw up your body's hormones in that way, because growth hormone is a very, very important hormone in your body for aging and repair and development and so forth. So if you're eating carbohydrates late at night, you're going to shut down those mechanisms. If you eat carbohydrates at any time, you're going to be shutting down a lot of mechanisms, but that's specifically the timing part of it. So I eat, right before I go to bed. I feel great when I do that. I sleep like a baby.
How many meals do you eat?
Say again, sorry?
Are you 1 meal a day, or how many meals a day do you eat?
Usually. So it depends on how hard I'm training. And it depends on how fatty the meal is that I have. So if it's a high fat beef meal, then I'll eat usually just once a day. But if I'm just training like hard, if I actually have the time to, I might do that twice a day, and that's fine. If I'm getting more lean stuff, I'm definitely going to be hungrier more than once a day, because there's much less calories and nutrition in very lean meat. So you just need more pounds of meat in order to get the same caloric intake. And I find that if I'm going to eat during the day and I don't want to be sort of sleepy and lethargic, I'll hold myself back from, I won't quite eat to satiety. I'll just eat a lot, and enough, and I'll just be like, okay, I'll just stop it there. And I find it works a little better. Sometimes I've had different experiences where I'll eat a steak, but I won't eat until I'm full, and it'll just supercharge me. I don't know why. And I just feel like I just got to go do something. I've got to go, kill an animal or something. I just charged up. Whereas I don't know exactly what that mechanism is. Maybe it's just you've given yourself enough energy, and your body's just like, right, we need more of that. Let's go get it.
Let's go.
But I generally like working out and then eating, because I think of it as like, an animal out in the wild, predator out in the wild, you're going your hunt, you're chasing this thing down, you've taken it down, you've killed it, and now you're going to eat it. And so I just think, physiologically, there may be nothing to it, but that's how I like to think about it. And there are different, sort of sports medicine people and trainers and things like that talk about this anabolic window after you work out, that for 30 to 40 minutes after you work out, your body is in an anabolic mode. And so anything you put in your body's just going to turn that into muscle. I haven't actually looked into that very closely, but that's sort of the idea behind having the protein shake directly after you work out, eating something directly after you work out.
Yeah,
God knows if it has any water, but
how true that is, because you see bodybuilders.
No, I have no idea.
There's some bodybuilders eat like Cocoa Pops straight after they train.
Yeah, well, yeah, but that's the thing, and a lot of these guys, when I was playing rugby in Europe, like the trainers there were saying, it doesn't matter what you eat, just get calories in you, and those calories will turn into muscle. I never bought that, but that is sort of an accepted theory. Physiologically, if you're thinking about an animal taking down a kill and expending all this energy to do that, and then eating, maybe there's something triggered by that. But I haven't seen anything specifically to say that, but I do know that I feel better when I do it, and so I just do it.
Dr. Chaffee, I remember chatting to you and you were talking about big fluctuations in your weight, which kind of, it really surprised me, because you're super lean and you're not a teenager, like you're 42.
Yeah.
You can have these fluctuations in muscle.
42 next week, so
sorry, 41.
Okay. Yeah,
41.
That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Can you tell me about that range? Like, just recently, how heavy were you, and then what happened when you sort of stopped going to the gym?
Oh, well, very recently, before I went to America to visit my family, I was about 110 kilos. And, that's with working out fairly regularly, 3 to 4 days a week, and eating to satiety. I sort of dropped a little bit of that because I just wasn't eating as much as I normally would. And I didn't eat enough to, maintain that when I was back home, because I was eating with my family, and I wasn't necessarily cooking my own meals. I wasn't necessarily cooking as much as I normally would. But then I sort of made sort of saw my sort of weight dropping off a bit, which I didn't want. And so I made a concerted effort to eat more, eat enough, I should say. I wasn't forcing myself, but I wasn't actually eating to when I was full previously. And so I got back up to sort of 110 after I left. But then, coming back to Australia was quite difficult. They canceled my flight to Perth, so I had to go through Sydney. They kept me in Sydney for 16 days before I was allowed to come back to Perth. And then I had to quarantine in Perth for 2 weeks. So I didn't have access to the gym that whole time. I didn't necessarily have access to the amount of food that I would normally eat either. And so I ended up dropping down. I think it was like 103 or something like that. And then just recently, because I still haven't gotten in the gym, I sort of noticed myself, I'm just sort of creeping down, and I was like 100K. I actually dropped below like 100. I'm like, that is not okay. Like that. No, we're stopping that today. And so I started doing more work. Started working out, and then and just eating until I was full again. So I'm back over 100, but I'm like literally just over 100 kgs now. I still look, very muscular. It's still the same body fat percentage. It's just that, I wasn't eating enough to maintain my body mass, or B, working out enough to stimulate that sort of growth. When I was playing rugby, my weight would fluctuate wildly. So when I was out of season, I would eat a whole bunch, and I would literally like slam on 30 pounds in a month, because when I was just going to the gym, because there's so much sprinting and running and so forth. I really couldn't keep up with the calorie intake that I needed. And so I would, sort of out of season, I could be 265 pounds, 270 pounds. And then, sort of a couple months into rugby, really leaning down and getting just, very, very cut. I'd be about 245, which is about 110 kilos, maybe 110 and a bit. And, but it was difficult for me to maintain that unless I was going to the gym and eating enough. And so I could regularly drop down to around 200 pounds, which is crazy. It's like a 60-pound swing, and most of that was muscle. I just wasn't eating enough to maintain the muscle. And so so it was just sort of be like 90 kilos or something like that. So I go from 120 kilos down to 90 kilos.
Huge.
It's not what I want. But then when I stopped working out to that level, running, sprinting, and so forth, and I was just focusing on the weights, and I wasn't expending so much energy, my body was just like, oh, thank God. And it would just like all the the food that I put into it would just rebuild, and I would have this rebound boom of musculature that would just sort of slam back. And so I sort of had these big strains. I had sort of 2 sets of clothes. I still have some, and they were like the jeans that were like much bigger. My waist size would basically stay the same, but my thighs would just get so much bigger that I couldn't wear like jeans or pants in my waist size. I'd have to go up several. So maybe my waist size would be like sort of 32, 34, usually 34. But I would have to wear size 40 jeans just to get them on my damn legs. And they'd be like tight. They'd be like skin tight on my thighs. 38s would definitely be skin tight on my thighs. And so it would be just goofy looking. It would just be like, it was like I'd pull the waist out. Look like, it's like, oh, you're in my fat pants, And I'd have to actually fold it over and secure it down with a belt.
So
just to get over my damn legs.
Obviously, serious muscle gain is possible in carnivore. And
absolutely.
That's something that a lot of people ask when they join like the Carnivore challenge, or when they're sort of, thinking about like traditional dogma of you need carbohydrates plus protein to build muscle.
No, absolutely not. No.
yeah, we've had people in 30 days they pack on maybe like 3 kilos net, but it's 5 kilos of muscle and then 2 kilos of fat loss, and so they go from say like 90 to 93.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about muscle building in carnivore?
Well, I mean, just for me, like every time I go to the gym and I work out, and I push myself very hard. I know how to work out. I've been doing this, since I was a kid, so I get a lot, and I get a lot more out of it because of my diet. But if I'm doing that, I'm working out hard and I'm eating to what my body wants me to eat, I'll put on muscle very, very quickly. So, I don't really have fat to lose at this point, but I did that at the beginning when I did have extra fat. I was lifting up weights heavily, but I was losing fat. So I was like shredding fat and stacking on muscle, but my weight was like exactly the same.
At the same
It was just
time,
like, yeah, exactly. So I was gaining a lot of muscle, but I was also burning a lot of fat. Now, because I don't really have fat, much excess fat I don't have any excess fat to lose. I mean, I could lean down if I wanted to go for some certain appearance, but I'm my physiologically, this is the body fat percentage my body wants, and I'm happy with that. But when I'm working out and I'm eating to satiety, every time I'll go back to the gym, I'll be like a pound heavier, like every time, like a pound, maybe 2 pounds and things like every single time. And so when I was going to America right before, like I was really hitting the gym hard for the last couple of weeks before I came here. And I just noticed my weight was just ticking up and ticking up and ticking up. And I mentioned previously that, during COVID, couldn't go to the gym at all. So I wasn't really working out. And actually the previous year before that, I was only going to the gym basically once a month because I just didn't have time. It was too busy. And so I got out of the habit of that. And because I couldn't go at all during COVID lockdowns, I was just like burning to get out there. So the second the gyms opened back up, I was back in there at least 4 days a week, sometimes 5 or 6. And I would go, I couldn't do my big, 3-4 hour workouts that I normally like to do, but I'd at least go for an hour to 2. And I was eating a lot. And so I went from 93 kilos to 105 kilos in 5 weeks. And I was same body fat percentage. So that was all muscle. And so
because you've been to that before, like, not everyone's going to be able to sort of just go bang, chuck on like, an extra.
No, probably not. And also because like, I hadn't been working out really regularly in a year and 4 months. So my body was really wanting to put on weight. Yeah, I was ready to go. So you get those beginner gains where you haven't really worked out much, and all of a sudden you're hitting the gym more and you're stimulating muscles for the first time. That you go, yeah, let's go. So, there's definitely part of that in there. But even now, when I'm 100 kilos or 110 kilos, if I'm working out hard and consistently, I will just keep putting on weight. As far as the carbohydrates are concerned, yeah, this is a long-standing myth that you have to eat carbohydrates in order to get bigger and build muscle. And this is your bulking phase. Then you go on your cutting phase and so forth. I think that is completely defeating the point of all this because, like we said earlier, when you have high blood sugar, you're stuffing in glycogen into your muscles. That is a molecule, and that has that's a physical size, right? So you're depositing these molecules in your muscles, and that will bulk up your muscles. Okay, so they'll look bigger. They also draw in water, so you'll have more water weight. So you'll have wet, soggy muscles, which look bigger. And so you eat a bunch of carbohydrates, your muscles will sort of swell up, but that's not swelling with muscle. Okay, that's unhealthy weight, and it fine. It may look bigger, but it's not stronger, and it will go away. And so then when you go in your cutting phase, you cut out all the carbohydrates and so forth. Well, the glycogen just disappears, the water disappears, and now you're just left with the muscle that you built. Okay, so it's not helping you build any more muscle. Okay, in my estimation, you can get much better results by eating. Just by eating meat. And I think your body just responds and it just tells you how much it wants, and you just give it what it wants and it will rebuild. If you force yourself to eat more calories, I don't think there's any evidence to suggest that you will force your body to build more muscle as opposed to depositing fat. Okay. And also that's what carbohydrates also do, because they're depositing intramuscular fat as well, which also makes your muscles look bigger. So this is like when we feed animals grains, like cows grains and so forth, to fatten them up and get that marbling. That marbling is intramuscular fat deposition from hyperglycemia. Okay. And so when we eat carbohydrates, our muscles look like that too. So they look bigger, but they're like a Wagyu beef. I mean, it's disgustingly unhealthy. It's not going to be as efficient and effective as a muscle group as it would be otherwise. So when you're eating just carnivore and you're only eating meat and fat, you're not depositing this glycogen, you're not depositing this fat, and your muscles are working better. You're only gaining lean muscle mass, and your muscles are going to work better. Your body's going to work better. You can work harder and you'll get more out of your workout. So you'll actually build muscle faster and better. I've actually just started talking to, I've spoken to bodybuilders and things like that about this before. Some of them have been interested in trying it, but they're like, oh, well, maybe after this competition, I'll do it, because, it's very understandable. You don't want to, switch horses in the middle of a race, so they're just like, well, let me just finish this off. But then generally, once they're, that's sort of finished up, they're not as, you strike while the iron's hot as well, right? So it's a lot of these things. So they sort of forget how interested they were in trying it, and they've just sort of gone on with their life. But I'm, speaking to a couple of people that actually want to try it, and I'm going to help sort of coach them through their next competition with a carnivore diet. And so we can just show, because everyone's saying that you have to do it this certain way, but people feel miserable. They're affecting their health. They hate it. And, and they're saying like, hey, I'm getting good results not doing that and just doing carnivore. What do we think? And so, all the old school bodybuilders used to do that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of these guys, steak and eggs, that's it. And, some of them would have like a cheat day maybe, but most of them were consistently carnivore the vast majority of their careers. Was it Serge Nubret, who was Arnold Schwarzenegger's body idol? That's who Arnold Schwarzenegger idolized as a bodybuilder. This guy was jacked until his death in his 70s from it sounds like foul play. They don't really know what's going on, but the guy was ripped. I mean, he was doing like bodybuilding exhibitions like into his late 60s.
Wow.
This guy would routinely eat 6 pounds of horse meat a day. And horse meat, horse meat. He's French, so I don't know why they just like their horse meat. But yeah, so 6 pounds of horse meat a day.
Wow.
And he was just a beast. People should look him up. Serge Nubret, Nubret, I believe it's spelled. The guy was just a statue of a man. And if people watch that movie Pumping Iron with Arnold Schwarzenegger, where they saw on his last run at the Mr. Olympia, the guy who got second is Serge, and he was just like sort of a late entry. He just said, yeah, I'll come in, and he ended up getting second, not even like training for it, and I honestly, I'm looking at that and I saw that guy, I'm like, that guy is way more jacked than Arnold, and I honestly thought, I was like, I think that guy should have won. Arnold was 26 in that. Nubret was 37.
Wow.
And he was yoked. I mean, this guy was just a specimen of a man. Prior to that, but Arnold Schwarzenegger listened to that too. He ate a ton of meat. He just ate meat. That's what he was doing. And especially before that, it was essentially pure carnivore. They all did it. And these are all the people that inspired Ronnie Coleman and everyone else to get into bodybuilding in the first place. And so no, you can't possibly do it. They all did it. Your idols all did it. And, say, well, they aren't as big as Ronnie Coleman. Well, Ronnie Coleman is a very unique individual. That guy was just an absolute.
He was on some special gear too.
He was, but before that, he, according to him, he wasn't winning any competitions. He was getting like third place and things like that. Yeah. And he just got tired of it. He was going natural, and these guys on roids or getting first and second, and he's getting third, and he's beating the rest of them because he was just a specimen as well. But then he just said, all right, screw it. Then I'll just use all this stuff. And then he just won everything from then on out. But, these sort of size monsters now. Yeah. I mean, they're eating a shitload of meat, and B, they are using copious amounts of steroids.
Yeah. It doesn't look great. It looks far from natural. At least in
No,
Arnold's
it doesn't.
it looks like something that you want to attain.
Yeah. I mean, at least Arnold, like, I mean, that guy was, superhuman in the sense that like that you don't see that naturally in humans. So you knew that there was some, anabolic sort of supplementation going on there, but it was still in that realm of reality.
Yeah, that's right.
It
was great.
Whereas someone who's just a beast of a man. Yeah, exactly. It's just some beast of a man. Like, okay, I could see that happening. But then you go past that and you're just like, that's different. That doesn't look natural. That doesn't look normal, And so, yeah, it's weird. I don't know if bodybuilding is going to get away from that and come back to a more natural look or not. But, it doesn't either way, whatever happens, you don't need to do the bulking cutting nonsense, because I think that's counterproductive. I think that you're hurting yourself by putting in all this intramuscular fat and actually slowing down your muscles and your and your recovery and so forth. You're going to be sore. You're going to hurt. You're going to have aches. You're going to have pains. It's going to be harder.
And when you're unhealthy,
exactly.
You can't train as hard for as long, so you won't get as good results long term.
That's exactly it. And you won't get the results from the same amount of work, from the same amount of effort. You won't be able to work as hard, but you'll also won't be able to get the same results of that amount of work. People say performance and results are 90% diet and 10% hard work. But, I disagree with that. I think it's 100% diet, and everything else is a product of your diet, or a function of your diet, because depending on what you eat, that is what you're going to get out of that. So if you're not eating the right things, your body's not going to be working properly. You're not going to be able to recover or repair your body to the same extent as you would have otherwise. And you won't be able to run properly. If you put a bit of diesel in your petrol engine, you're going to kill the engine. It's not going to run right. If you put all diesel in there, it's not going to work at all. You can think of your body like that as well. If you put in the right fuel, you'll get proper performance. And if you put something else in there, you're going to screw it up. You can have a Ferrari, but it's going to run like crap if you put in the wrong fuel.
Totally. All right. I think we'll wrap it up there. That's a brilliant way to finish things off.
Sounds good.
Thanks very much, man.
Yeah, you're very welcome. It was a pleasure.